Good morning, I'm Rimmo, and this is the Daily Signal for November 17th, 2025. We're starting with breaking news that's shaking the world right now. Delhi is under siege after a devastating car bomb blast near the Red Fort killed 15 people and wounded dozens more. Authorities have arrested 11 suspected terrorists in a massive security crackdown, and the entire capital remains on maximum alert as investigators uncover an international terror network.
Unfiltered. Now.
Breaking. Russia launched overnight ballistic missile strikes, killing 42 people as NATO forces go on high alert and the UN holds emergency sessions. Urgent. 500,000 protesters have stormed Manila, demanding the president's resignation over a massive corruption scandal that could topple the government. Developing. Chile's election results trigger nationwide protests as a far-right candidate's victory sparks fears of a return to dictatorship-era policies. Crisis. Bangladesh deploys military and cuts internet nationwide as political tensions explode ahead of a crucial corruption verdict. Escalating. Peru's Amazon region erupts in deadly violence as 30 die in clashes between indigenous guards and cocaine cartels. Tension. China orders its students to evacuate Japan immediately as diplomatic relations collapse over military incidents. Massive. Mexico City witnesses its largest youth protests in history as Gen Z demonstrators demand action against crime and corruption. Captured. Ecuador's most wanted drug lord is arrested in Spain, triggering a state of emergency and fears of cartel retaliation. Controversial. Britain announces its toughest asylum policies ever, sparking outrage and mass protests across the country. These stories are developing fast. Let's get the details on what authorities aren't telling you. Breaking right now, Delhi is in the grip of its worst security crisis in over a decade. The death toll from the Red Fort car bombing has climbed to 15, with over 30 fighting for their lives in hospitals across the city. But here's what's truly shocking. This wasn't a lone wolf attack. The National Investigation Agency has uncovered what they're calling a doctor module, 3 medical professionals who allegedly helped plan this devastating assault. Think about that for a moment. Trusted healthcare workers turned terrorists. The implications are staggering. Forensic teams confirmed the bombers used military-grade explosives, ammonium nitrate mixed with RDX. This level of sophistication points to international backing. Sources tell us the suspects used encrypted messaging apps and had connections across multiple countries. This is happening right now. As I'm speaking, raids are ongoing in Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, and Uttar Pradesh. Schools remain closed, metro stations are sealed, and armed patrols are conducting random vehicle checks across the capital. The government has activated emergency protocols not seen since the 2008 Mumbai attacks. The crisis deepens as we turn to another urgent situation unfolding overseas. Developing overnight, Russia has launched its most devastating missile barrage in months, and the international community is scrambling to respond. At least 42 people are confirmed dead after ballistic missiles struck Kyiv, Lviv, and Kharkiv. But here's the most chilling detail. One of those missiles struck a hospital in Kyiv. A hospital. We're talking about targeting civilians, targeting the wounded, targeting those trying to save lives. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. NATO has placed rapid response forces on high alert for the first time this year. The U.S. ambassador to Russia has been recalled for emergency consultations. The UN Security Council held an all-night emergency session with nations calling this an act of unprecedented aggression. What authorities aren't telling you is just how close we are to a broader conflict. Behind closed doors, European leaders are discussing military responses that were unthinkable just days ago. This could mean we're witnessing the opening moves of something much larger. Ukraine has activated nationwide air raid sirens, and NATO is warning of serious consequences if these attacks continue. Adding to today's chaos, another government is facing a complete meltdown. Unprecedented scenes are unfolding in the Philippines right now. Over 500,000 protesters have flooded the streets of Manila in what officials are calling the largest demonstration in the country's modern history. Here's the explosive revelation. Leaked documents show President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s administration diverted $200 million in disaster relief funds to offshore accounts. $200 million meant for flood victims, stolen while people were drowning in their homes. The government's response has been brutal. Police used tear gas and water cannons against peaceful protesters. At least 200 people have been arrested, 15 hospitalized. But the crowds keep growing, and now we're seeing something remarkable. The House of Representatives has launched impeachment proceedings. Sources confirm our worst fears. The Senate is completely divided. Some senators are calling for early elections, others are backing the president. The political system is in complete paralysis. This is far worse than initially reported. Constitutional experts are warning of a complete breakdown of democratic institutions. The military has remained neutral so far, but that could change if the chaos continues. Meanwhile, another situation is spiraling in South America. Shocking election results in Chile have triggered nationwide protests and fears of democratic backsliding. Far-right candidate José Antonio Cast won the first round with 38% of the vote, a result that sent shockwaves across Latin America. The implications are staggering. Cast's victory represents the most dramatic political shift in Chile since the end of the Pinochet dictatorship. Left-wing groups are calling it a return to fascism, and thousands have taken to the streets in Santiago and Valparaiso. Authorities are scrambling as riot police deploy across major cities. Curfews have been imposed in the capital for the first time in decades. The European Union and United Nations have called for calm, but the situation is escalating by the hour. This is all part of a bigger picture. We're seeing democratic institutions under threat across multiple continents simultaneously. But that's not the only crisis today. Bangladesh is on the brink of complete chaos. Emergency situation developing in Bangladesh, where the government has imposed a nationwide curfew and internet blackout ahead of the Sheikh Hasina corruption verdict. The military has been deployed to major cities as tensions reach a boiling point. Critical breaking point reached. Over 1,000 people have been arrested in the past 24 hours alone. Mass rallies by competing political factions have paralyzed Dhaka. International observers are warning of potential widespread violence. What authorities aren't telling you is just how fragile the situation has become. Sources inside the government confirm that emergency evacuation plans for foreign nationals are being activated. This is the closest Bangladesh has come to complete political collapse in recent memory. The crisis deepens as we turn to a violent confrontation in the Amazon. Breaking from the Amazon, a full-scale war is erupting in Peru's rainforest as indigenous communities fight back against cocaine cartels. In the past 24 hours alone, over 30 people have died in violent clashes. This is unprecedented. Indigenous guards, armed with traditional weapons and sheer determination, are taking on heavily armed drug traffickers. The Peruvian military has launched a major offensive, but the cartels are fighting back with explosive force. Thousands of indigenous people have fled their homes. The UN is calling for humanitarian aid as what was once a pristine ecosystem becomes a battlefield. The US and EU are offering military support to combat drug trafficking. Sources confirm this violence is spreading beyond Peru's borders, threatening the entire Amazon region. In related breaking news, tensions are exploding between two of Asia's largest powers. Diplomatic relations collapse between China and Japan as Beijing issues formal warnings for Japanese students and tourists to evacuate immediately. This is the most serious deterioration in China-Japan relations in decades. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Both nations are conducting military drills in the East China Sea. Japan has recalled its ambassador from Beijing. Japanese businesses in China report increased harassment and threats. New details reveal the scope. This isn't just about territorial disputes anymore. Sources suggest cyber attacks and economic warfare are escalating behind the scenes. The United States has offered to mediate, but both sides appear beyond negotiation. Major disruption hits Mexico as an entire generation takes to the streets. Generational uprising rocks Mexico City as hundreds of thousands of Gen Z protesters demand action against crime and corruption. This is being called the largest youth-led movement in Mexican history. Emergency response. Police have used non-lethal force against crowds, resulting in 50 injuries and over 100 arrests. Schools and universities remain closed across the capital. The implications are staggering. An entire generation is rejecting the political establishment. The government has promised new anti-corruption reforms, but protesters say it's too little, too late. Critical developments continue with a major victory in the war on drugs. Major security win. Ecuador's most wanted drug lord, El Lobo, has been captured in Madrid in a joint international operation. Diego Mendoza's arrest is expected to disrupt cocaine trafficking routes worth billions. Authorities seized $15 million in assets, but Ecuador has declared a state of emergency, fearing cartel retaliation. Military patrols have increased in major cities as officials warn of possible revenge attacks. This victory comes at a cost. The power vacuum could trigger even more violence as rival gangs fight for control. Finally, controversial policies are sparking outrage in Britain. Controversial new policies. Britain's Labour government has announced its toughest asylum rules ever, including mandatory detention for illegal arrivals and accelerated deportations. Over 1,000 asylum seekers were intercepted in the past week alone as boat crossings surge. Protests have erupted in London and Dover as human rights groups warn of a humanitarian disaster. Political fallout is immediate. Even the Conservative Party is calling for harsher measures, while others demand the policies be reversed entirely. The public safety implications are still developing as this story continues to unfold. This is all part of a bigger picture. What we're witnessing today isn't just isolated incidents. We're seeing a pattern of institutional breakdown across multiple continents. From terror attacks in India to political upheaval in the Philippines, from drug wars in Peru to generational uprisings in Mexico, democratic institutions and public safety are under unprecedented threat. The implications are staggering. We're witnessing the most serious global instability since the end of the Cold War. Nations are deploying military forces domestically. Governments are falling, and entire regions are erupting in violence. What connects all these stories is a common thread. Populations losing faith in their institutions, governments unable to provide basic security, and established orders crumbling under pressure. The stakes couldn't be higher. Each of these crises has the potential to spread beyond borders. We're seeing diplomatic relations collapse, military forces mobilizing, and international alliances strained to the breaking point. This affects everyone because in our interconnected world, instability anywhere threatens stability everywhere. Economic markets are already reacting, international trade is being disrupted, and global security is at risk. We'll continue monitoring these developing situations throughout the day. These are not just news stories. They're the defining moments that will shape the world we live in. That's your breaking news update for November 17th, 2025. 10 critical stories that are reshaping our world in real time. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay with us as we continue tracking these rapidly developing situations. Subscribe to the Daily Signal for the latest updates, share this critical information with others who need to know, and send us your thoughts on how these events are affecting your community. I'm Remo, and we'll be back with more breaking developments as they happen. Until then, stay safe out there. The world is changing faster than ever.
Unfiltered.